we are now at the academic history quadrant of the Cal State Apply application. And this one is surprisingly generally short, but it really does depend on the amount of institutions that you attended. So if you're somebody who's gone to multiple community colleges or multiple undergraduate institutions, this section may take you a little bit longer. If you've just attended one or two universities, this section might be a breeze. So with that being said, there's three subsections to this. So let's go ahead and begin working through them. The first one would be your colleges attended. And what's important here is not just how we complete this, but what information we provide. Now, it's very common. Students will ask me, well, what does the university actually want to see? What if I took some personal improvement or just a class I took for personal enjoyment at a community college and I didn't obtain any academic credit for it? I would recommend not including that. And the reason being is the admissions office is going to ask you for a transcript from every single institution that you include here. And also, I should add, for every institution that falls on one of the transcripts that you would include for the universities that you included here. So if you've gone to an institution, you didn't receive credit for it, I would highly recommend not adding that college. You could notate the experience in your personal statement, so on and so forth, but I would not include it here. Otherwise, admissions is going to ask you for a document from every one of the universities that you list here. So unless you earned academic credit related to graduation from a university, I would not include that university here, okay? Now, with that being said, if you have attended a university that you've earned academic credit, and actually you'd have to go to a graduate program, you would hit the Add College or University button, and then from here, you can actually search for a variety of universities. So given that I went to CSUMB myself, I would just go ahead and find that here within the drop-down menu. Sometimes you have to be a little bit careful about spelling. It's not good about always finding these things. And sometimes the way they've entered them in the system, you have to be very exact. So you could see I couldn't just search California State University, Monterey Bay, long form. That wouldn't work. I actually had to follow their kind of hyphen usage and so on and so forth. So you have to play around a little bit. If you can't find your school, you can always hit this and then manually input this. But in most circumstances, if you've gone to a US-based institution, it should be able to auto-populate based on what you find here in the ultimate search bar and what you include there to find it, okay? So ultimately, once you've added that college, you would go in and provide some of the information around the times that you attended. So if you obtained a degree, or if you're planning to obtain a degree. So for example, if you're in progress to complete your bachelor's degree before applying to this program, which is very common, you would still include yes as your answer to this question. Without doing so, another university would have to be a yes here for you to qualify to apply to our program. From there, you would notate if you've either earned the degree or if the degree is in progress, what the degree is in terms of if it's a Bachelor's of Arts, Bachelor's of Science, so on and so forth, and then what was your major. And it's very common, CSUMB is a great example of this, where your major may not actually exist within this drop-down menu. For example, my major was actually human communication, and you don't see that listed here, but my sub-focus was on history. So I just went ahead and selected history because that was the closest that would fit my degree program, even though it's not listed there. From there, you would notate when you earned the degree, also when you started the program, as you will see later down in this drop-down menu. Now, if you want to, you can include your minor information. It's not terribly important, but you could include that there if you want to. And if you did double major, it is important that you click on check if you were a double major. It's also not atypical sometimes for people to get a bachelor's and master's degree from the same institution. And if you did that, you could add another degree program to that same institution, so you're not having to go back and auto-populate it again. From there, you would notate what type of term system your college ultimately used. For most people, this is probably either going to be a semester or quarter system, and you would pick appropriate based on that. From there, you would notate what type of tuition you earn. Once again, I don't know why this is terribly important for the colleges themselves. You do have to go through this. So in some circumstances, if neither of those apply, you could hit not applicable, but you would do your best to notate that here. Then you would notate when was your first semester and when was your last semester. And if you're still attending, you would hit this drop down, or excuse me, this checkbox here, so that you would notate that you're still in progress. This is important from an admission standpoint because it's not atypical that you'll want to be conditionally admitted to a degree so that you can receive a firm offer. So for example, let's say you were applying to the spring 2024 application, but you don't complete your degree until fall of 23. Well, you'd want to notate that you're still attending it and then send in a transcript so that the program can provide you a conditional offer of admittance. And then once you complete your degree, you can then send in your completed transcript after you've actually graduated. I hope that makes some sense without being too confusing. From there, you would hit save and onwards and upwards you would go. Now, the standardized test section is one I generally recommend people opt out of. You have an option to select either that you would like to add a test or that you're not adding a standardized test. 9 times out of 10, it just makes more sense to hit I'm not adding any standardized tests because we don't require the GRE and you would only really include a standardized test more so for a test of English, such as the English proficiency exams like TOEFL, IELTS, so on and so forth. If that's the case, you could add those test scores here. But even then, I would probably recommend just skipping it because you're going to provide a paper document of that later in the application anyways. So 9 times out of 10, I would recommend I'm not adding any standardized tests. And now you've already completed 2 of the 3 subsections. The third is your GPA entry. And this is one of those things that really I generally recommend for students to ballpark, okay? Because the reality is, unless you have your transcript in front of you, sometimes you don't know all of those credit hours, so on and so forth. We're not really going to check this terribly close. We're going to check your actual transcripts that you submit to the university. So in my case, I had 128 total credits that I took at CSUMB for my undergrad. So I notate that here, what my overall GPA is, and from there you're given a quality points that kind of, massages those two into a final number. Once again, this for us is not terribly important because we're going to defer to your actual transcript. So do the best that you can here. I would always naturally recommend going and looking at a copy of your unofficial or official transcripts to get this information, but ballparking will work just fine. What is important is notating whether it's an undergraduate or a graduate degree. Those do impact your admission slightly differently, naturally, because for most graduate programs, you'll have less credit hours. And the way that the university is going to check your qualification for our program, which is a 2.5 GPA or higher, is based on the last 30, 60, or 120 credit hours that you have, depending on a variety of factors. But in most circumstances, it's the last 60 units of college study that you've had. Okay. From there, you would save and you're all set. And that would be as simple as that. So this section is really, really easy. The only thing that makes it more time consuming is based on how many institutions you decide to share here, okay? And once again, I would only share institutions that impacted your ability to earn a degree. So community colleges that you transfer credit into a 4-year program for, or a 4-year program that you transfer into another 4-year program for, or graduate degrees that you hold as well, okay? So the second section is relatively quite quick to complete. We'll start to work on our third section in the next video. I hope you found this helpful, and otherwise take care and do let us know if you have any questions about the application process.